Welcome to part 3 of our 4-part series on the EUNorth and Nordic business marketing opportunities. Today we're going to focus our discussion on the economic and financial environment, challenges, and risks faced by each of the 4 Nordic countries: Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark.
The Nordic countries represent about 2% of the world economy, equating to $1.61 trillion. The United States accounts for about 24%, basically a quarter of the global economy. Despite the relative small size of the Nordic countries, they often lead in innovation, sustainability, quality of life, and high living standards. The collective economic strength is enhanced by a focus on trade, technology, and social equality. The inflation rate is depicted year over year. As inflation increases, interest rates increase, reflecting the economic strength. Persistent inflation can cause loss of competitiveness and rising unemployment, with a longer extension of lower growth to unwind. Inflation has equivalently started to decline, promising economic gain and involvement in the market for European countries. Norway seems to have the most fluctuation in inflation due to the presence of their oil industry. Higher inflation often results in a decrease in currency value, which is why the current decline is significant. GDP is a lagging indicator and calculates the market value of all goods and services for a country. Where GDP decline leads to layoffs and cost cutting and directly affects interest rates and employment, GDP growth leads to increased spending, creation of more jobs, investment, and salary increases. Exchange rates can also affect the increase and decrease of the amount available to spend and invest. GDP trends above indicate Sweden's economy with the highest GDP, growing at a faster rate over Norway, Denmark, and Finland. Norway has been up and down over the years, but is showing more stagnant and flat levels of growth, maintaining YOY, and Denmark and Finland are growing steadily. A stall in GDP, such as what Norway has been experiencing, results in actions by government to lower interest rates and foster growth. Norway has the highest GDP per capita, driven by its oil and gas sector, as well as strong public services, and Denmark follows closely behind with a strong welfare state and high levels of productivity across various sectors. Sweden also has a high GDP per capita, benefiting from a diverse economy that includes technology, manufacturing, and exports, where Finland generally has the lowest GDP per capita among these countries, but it has seen significant growth in technology and education sectors. Overall, all 4 countries have relatively high GDP per capita compared to global averages, reflecting their robust economies and high living standards. When looking at the average household income across the EU, you can see Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland are pretty congruent, especially when in comparison to the UK. However, when compared to the United States, it is a little bit lower. Higher income inequality in the US has a stronger focus on social safety nets and redistribution in Europe, which can level out incomes, and a slightly lower overall GDP per capita in the EU compared to the US. The northern part of the world is high income, with the rest mixed between upper middle, lower middle, and low income countries. Norway is known for its high standard of living, which typically promotes low inequality through progressive taxation and social services. In Sweden, urban areas may have higher incomes, while rural regions might experience lower economic opportunities, with factors like education and employment influencing the distribution. There's pockets of low income in Finland, but the overall income distribution is more equitable due to progressive taxation and strong labor protections. Denmark is a high-income country with low levels of income inequality, one of the lowest in the world actually, due to their welfare state and taxation.
The 4 currencies for the Nordic countries are the Danish krone, the Finnish euro, which before the euro was the marka, the Norwegian krone, and the Swedish krona. There are 4 factors that impact the value of the currency. An excessive supply results in the value decreasing, and an increase in demand results in the value increasing. The impact of the currency changes is depicted in the graph to the bottom right here, showing a sharp increase of inflation associated with COVID and the decline after COVID. The political and economic stability of world events can impact the spending habits, and therefore it'll affect the value of the currency. Interest and inflation rates are closely tied together for currency. The lower inflation rate equals lower interest rates, providing an increased opportunity for borrowing, investments, and spending. Higher inflation rate equals higher interest rates, which lead to reduced spending and reduced ability to borrow. Finland has transitioned to the euro, making it easier to do business within the EU. The trade agreements and patterns show frequent trade within the Nordic countries, resulting in reduced costs. Finland is historically a trade partner with Russia due to favorable rates, as shown in the upper left, where 1 euro equals 105 rubles. This slide depicts the historical high, average, and low conversions to US dollar for each of the 4 Nordic countries: Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark. The lowest currency rates are recently in April 2024 for Norway, Finland, and Denmark. Efforts in Norway to redistribute income over the past 2 years, coupled with a decline in oil and gas, have contributed to a decline in conversion rates. Sweden and Finland have been in recession since 2023, with unemployment rising and labor demand decreasing. This has contributed to the lowest currency values in 2024. Both have started to recover slowly. Norway's krone and Sweden's krona and their exchange rates with the US dollar are depicted here at 0.092 and 0.096. The charts to the left depict the inconsistent trends of the exchange rates over the last 2 years. The exchange rate affects purchasing power and price of imported and exported goods, services, and materials. The impact affects the overall cost to manufacture goods and the overall GDP. A decrease in the exchange rate means the exported goods become cheaper for international buyers. An increase in the exchange rate results in an increase in the cost for importing materials and goods overseas that would be needed for manufacturing goods. In the case of Norway and Sweden, while the exchange rates have declined in recent years, the exchange rates of the krone and krona have improved, as you can see in the graph here, resulting in lower costs and an increase in exported goods to the US. Imports from Nordic partners such as Norway and Sweden, the Netherlands, and Germany and the EU, and China all help to reduce the import costs. The exports between the Nordic countries, Norway and Sweden, and outside the borders to Germany and the US result in a strengthening in business and a positive impact to GDP due to the favorable exchange rates. Exchange rates can be impacted by government actions, multiple economic developments, or debt. The impacts of those actions in one location may affect or shift the exchange rates and markets within another location. This slide depicts the Danish krone and euro in relation to the US dollar. Both have increased over the course of the last few months after a sharp decline. For Denmark and Finland, the stronger exchange rates equate to higher import costs for goods and export costs with the US. This explains why the import trade patterns for Denmark are primarily focused within the Nordic countries or importing materials from China and Germany. For Finland, the pattern is similar. It is focused on importing from within the other Nordic countries and from China and Germany, and traditionally Russia, where there is a better exchange rate and an opportunity to reduce the cost of raw materials. Exports for both Denmark and Finland are high with the US, so they can obtain a greater profit due to favorable exchange rates. The rates are dependent also on specific sectors, such as manufacturing and agriculture. The supply chain is more complex for manufactured goods, and therefore the cost will react to changes in the exchange rates. Agricultural resources rely heavily on local products and resources, and the impact of the exchange rates may be reduced. The Big Mac Index was developed by The Economist magazine and compares the price of Big Macs in various countries to the price in the United States. It was initially a humorous comparison. However, today it has evolved into a significant indicator of the global economy and currency valuation. In the US, the average cost of a Big Mac is around $5.15, though prices can vary. The index includes data from 78 countries. 5 countries exhibit a higher Big Mac price than the United States. These countries are Switzerland, Norway, Uruguay, Sweden, and Canada. When we consider the Big Mac index for Nordic countries, 2 of the 5 countries, Norway at $6.26 and Sweden at $5.59, have a higher price than the US. This represents a good baseline gauge of the increased cost to do business with and within Norway and Sweden. As leaders in technology, medical devices, medical equipment, life sciences, and clean energy, the financial state of the Nordic countries will directly impact the United States. given that Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland support over 929,977 US jobs. The Nordic countries are also leaders in the world in a flexible work schedule, with Sweden supporting over 309,000 US jobs across every state in the United States, Norway supporting 470,000, and Denmark with over 150,000. The general risk to the Nordic countries, depicted in light green, are low when compared to the surrounding region in red and orange, as represented in the lower right. The Nordic countries are linked to one another by strong financial and trade ties. Taxes are generally high, making it more expensive to do business in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. As a result, all four countries are sensitive to economic conditions and impacts both within and from trading partners in the EU and abroad. The greatest risks and impact in the upper right include energy costs, such as Russia cutting oil and gas supply, food insecurity or delays due to shipping or reduced shipping capabilities, and the impact of wars in Ukraine, Israel, and territorial disputes in Asia. The housing market presents a risk impacting overall household wealth due to overvalued prices, leading to a reduction in taxes and government revenue, resulting in an overall negative impact on household wealth. Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark perform better when compared to their OECD countries due to the diversification of risks across the 8 major areas as depicted in Figure 1. Here are our sources. Please join us for the last video in our 4-part series.